The wind cut through the air like icy blades, carrying flakes of snow that clung stubbornly to the pavement. Ethan stood at the nearly deserted bus stop, his breath forming little clouds that vanished into the cold. His coat, though frayed at the edges and missing a button, was the only shield he had against the winter chill. It wasn't much, but it kept him warm enough as he waited for the bus to take him to his early morning shift at the diner. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a woman standing a few feet away. She looked out of place in the bleak morning. Her clothes were neat, even elegant, but she wore no jacket. Her arms were folded tightly against her chest, shoulders hunched, as if she could make herself smaller and hide from the wind. Her cheeks were flushed, not from warmth, but from the bitter sting of the cold. Ethan felt a pang of concern. He didn't know her story, and he didn't need to. All he saw was someone clearly freezing, and that was enough. Without overthinking, he stepped closer, pulling off his coat and gently draping it over her shoulders. She flinched slightly in surprise, her eyes widening at the unexpected kindness. "You look colder than I feel," he said with a small smile, brushing away her attempt to protest. She clutched the coat tighter, the faintest smile tugging at her lips as warmth slowly seeped back into her. They didn't exchange names. They didn't need to. In that silent moment, under the gray winter sky, a simple gesture spoke louder than words ever could. The bus rumbled into view, but something about that brief encounter had already left its mark. The woman's shivering was subtle at first, a slight tremble in her hands, the quick way she rubbed her arms, but Ethan couldn't ignore it. The icy wind whipped between them, stinging his ears and numbing his fingers, yet he knew she must be feeling it even more without a coat. Before his mind had the chance to weigh the discomfort he'd endure, his body was already moving. He slipped his arms out of his worn jacket, the cold instantly biting into him like a swarm of needles. Stepping closer, he gently laid the coat across her shoulders. She turned toward him, startled, as though unsure whether to take it. Her eyes flicked between his determined face and the jacket now warming her. "I can't take this," she began, her voice a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "You look colder than I feel," Ethan replied softly, his tone warm enough to cut through the frost in the air. A faint smile curved his lips, not the kind meant to charm, but the kind that carried quiet sincerity. She hesitated, her hands gripping the edges of the jacket as though afraid it might vanish if she let go. He gave a small nod, as if to tell her it was okay, then stepped back into the full force of the winter wind. His breath rose in white clouds, dissipating into the gray morning sky. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there, two strangers bound by a single act of generosity, sharing a pocket of warmth in the middle of the cold. The bus was still minutes away, but the gesture had already made the wait feel shorter. The distant rumble of the bus broke the quiet, its headlights cutting through the swirling snow. The woman turned to Ethan, her hands already moving to slip the jacket from her shoulders. "Here, you should take it back," she said, her voice carrying both gratitude and concern. Ethan shook his head, stepping back slightly. "Keep it until you're warm," he insisted, his words gentle but firm. "It's just a jacket. You need it more right now." She hesitated, the fabric still clutched in her hands, as if torn between politeness and the comfort it brought. Finally, she pulled it tighter around herself, a silent acceptance that said more than any thank you could. The bus hissed to a stop, doors opening with a mechanical sigh. A gust of wind swept between them, carrying the scent of diesel and cold air. They didn't move toward each other for a handshake or a hug, there was no need. Instead, they exchanged a small wave, the kind that felt strangely personal despite its simplicity. Their smiles lingered for a heartbeat longer than expected, and then she stepped onto the bus while he stayed behind. As the vehicle pulled away, Ethan caught one last glimpse of her through the frosted glass, a faint silhouette, still wrapped in his coat. And just like that, she was gone. No names, no promises, no expectation of seeing each other again. Just two strangers, connected for a brief moment by kindness, each carrying the warmth of that encounter in their own way. The street felt colder without the jacket, but somehow, Ethan didn't mind. Ethan was finishing his shift at the diner when his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it, assuming it was another spam call, but something made him swipe to answer. "Hello?" he said cautiously. A warm, composed voice came through the line. "Ethan? I hope you remember me, the woman from the bus stop." He froze, instantly recalling the shivering figure wrapped in his old jacket. "Of course. Are you okay?" There was a soft pause before she spoke again. "My name is Clara. I'm actually the CEO of a company here in the city. I wanted to tell you something important." Her tone shifted, carrying the weight of something deeply personal. "The day you gave me your jacket was one of the hardest days of my life. I had just come from the hospital after losing my father. I felt numb, like nothing mattered anymore. I wasn't just cold, Ethan, I was empty." He listened quietly, his heart tightening at her words. "But you," she continued, "you didn't know me, yet you gave me the only layer you had against the cold. That simple act reminded me that there's still kindness in the world. It pulled me out of the darkness I was sinking into." Ethan didn't know what to say. He'd never thought of his gesture as anything more than common decency. But hearing her voice now, steady yet tinged with emotion, he realized it had meant far more than he could have imagined. "I owe you more than a thank you," Clara said softly. "And I'd like to see you in person." The call ended with a promise to meet, a promise that would change Ethan's life in ways he couldn't yet foresee. Ethan stepped into the towering glass building, feeling out of place in his modest clothes. The receptionist greeted him with a warm smile and led him to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Clara was there, dressed in a sharp suit but with the same kind eyes he remembered from that freezing morning. "Ethan," she said, extending her hand, "I'm so glad you came." Her office was bright and spacious, but it was her sincerity that filled the room. She invited him to sit, then leaned forward. "I've thought a lot about that day at the bus stop. You gave without expecting anything in return. People like you are rare, and I need people like you on my team." She slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was an offer for a full-time position at her company, complete with benefits and a salary Ethan had never dreamed of earning. He blinked, stunned. "Clara. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," she replied with a smile. "Consider it an investment in the kind of heart this world needs more of." Ethan's voice caught as he nodded. "Yes. Absolutely." As they shook hands, the weight of the moment settled over him. The memory of that cold morning flickered in his mind, not as a sacrifice, but as the beginning of something extraordinary. When he stepped back out into the city, the air still carried a winter chill, but it felt different now. Warmer, somehow. And as he walked away, a quiet thought stayed with him. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can open doors you never even knew existed. On the surface, Ethan's story was simple, just a young man offering his jacket to a stranger on a cold morning. But beneath that small act lay a powerful truth: kindness, no matter how ordinary it seems, can ripple far beyond the moment it's given. Ethan never sought recognition, payment, or even a thank you. He acted because compassion came naturally to him, because in that instant, someone else's comfort mattered more than his own. For Clara, it was more than warmth against the winter wind, it was warmth against the grief and emptiness that had gripped her heart. In the quiet exchange between two strangers, she was reminded that goodness still existed in the world, and that reminder gave her the strength to keep moving forward. Weeks later, when she rewarded Ethan not just with a job but with an opportunity to change his own life, it wasn't charity, it was recognition. She saw in him the rare kind of character that can't be taught in boardrooms or measured on resumes. Their paths had crossed by chance, yet both left forever changed. And perhaps that's the magic of genuine kindness: it asks for nothing, but has the power to give back more than you could ever imagine. In the end, Ethan's jacket wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a bridge between two lives, built in a moment and strong enough to change them both.